Imagine a world where the fate of Jerusalem hangs in the balance, where distant armies cross mountains and deserts, and where the future of an entire region seems uncertain. Imagine cities surrounded by walls, rulers facing impossible decisions, and ordinary people watching history unfold before their eyes. This was the age of the Crusades, a turbulent chapter in history when a Muslim world faced enormous military, political, and spiritual challenges. Yet behind these battles lies a deeper story, a story of perseverance, leadership, patience, and resistance. Islam's 1,400-year history reminds us that great trials do not always destroy a people. Sometimes they awaken courage that had been sleeping within them. In the 11th century, the political landscape of the Muslim world was deeply divided. Different rulers controlled different territories. Rivalries weakened cooperation, and powerful states often competed against one another. Then came the Crusader armies from Europe, driven by religious, political, and military ambitions, advancing toward the Eastern Mediterranean. Their arrival transformed the balance of power and eventually led to the capture of Jerusalem in 1099. For Muslims, Jerusalem was not simply another city. It was connected to the sacred history of Islam, the legacy of the prophets, and the blessed sanctuary of Al-Aqsa. Its loss, therefore, became a profound symbol of vulnerability and humiliation. But history teaches that defeat can become the beginning of determination. The first response was not immediate victory. It was a long and difficult process of rebuilding strength. Muslim leaders gradually recognized that military resistance alone would not be enough. Unity, organization, political stability, disciplined armies, and moral leadership were essential. Among the figures who emerged during this period was Imad ad-Din Zengi, a determined ruler who began challenging Crusader power and creating a stronger political foundation for future resistance. His campaigns demonstrated an important lesson. Before a great challenge can be defeated, weakness must first be confronted within. Zengi's efforts helped inspire a new generation of leaders, including his successor, Nur ad-Din Zengi, whose vision extended beyond individual battles. He understood that the struggle required patience and preparation. He strengthened institutions, supported religious education, developed military capabilities, and worked toward greater unity among Muslim territories. The road ahead, however, was still filled with uncertainty. The Crusader states remained powerful. Jerusalem remained under foreign control, and rival Muslim rulers still struggled to overcome their differences. The question was no longer simply whether resistance was possible. The greater question was whether the scattered forces of the Muslim world could become united enough to change history itself. As years passed, that question became more urgent, and somewhere within this uncertain landscape, a remarkable leader was preparing to rise. His name would become inseparable from Jerusalem: courage, mercy, and determination. His journey had not yet reached its greatest moment, but the foundations were already being laid. The struggle was entering a new chapter, and the destiny of Jerusalem was beginning to change. The rise of Salahuddin Ayyubi changed the direction of the struggle, but his success did not come from one miraculous moment. It was built through years of patience, discipline, political wisdom, and preparation. After serving under Nur ad-Din Zengi and learning the realities of power, warfare, and leadership, Salahuddin gradually emerged as a figure capable of bringing divided Muslim territories toward a common purpose. He understood that Jerusalem could not be recovered through emotion alone. A determined army needed organization, resources, unity, and a clear vision. His greatest challenge was therefore not only the Crusader armies standing beyond the borders, but also the divisions within the Muslim world itself. Every victory required overcoming obstacles that had existed for generations. As Salahuddin strengthened his authority in Egypt and Syria, the balance of power slowly began to shift. The Crusader states could no longer assume that Muslim territories would remain permanently divided. Yet the road to Jerusalem remained dangerous. The Crusaders possessed fortified cities, experienced soldiers, strategic positions, and powerful alliances. One mistake could destroy years of preparation. One reckless decision could turn hope into disaster. This was where patience became a weapon. Salahuddin did not rush simply because the goal was sacred. He waited, prepared, strengthened his forces, and watched the political landscape carefully. Then came a moment that would change everything. In 1187, tensions between the Crusaders and Muslim forces reached a critical point. After a Crusader force attacked Muslim interests and violated existing agreements, Salahuddin gathered a powerful army and moved toward the confrontation. The two sides eventually met near the Horns of Atin, where the harsh landscape itself became part of the battle. Heat, thirst, exhaustion, and difficult terrain weakened the Crusader army as Muslim forces maintained pressure around them. What followed became part of the battle. Heat, thirst, exhaustion, and difficult terrain weakened the Crusader army as Muslim forces maintained pressure around them. What followed became one of the decisive battles of the Crusades. The Crusader army was defeated, and the victory opened the road toward the recovery of much of the territory surrounding Jerusalem. But suspense remained, because defeating an army was one thing, while capturing the most important city in the region was another. Jerusalem still stood behind its formidable defenses, carrying memories of decades of conflict. Salahuddin now faced a decision that would define his place in history. He could pursue destruction and revenge, or he could demonstrate another kind of strength. The final approach toward Jerusalem became a test not only of military power, but also of character. As Muslim forces surrounded the city, the defenders realized that their situation was becoming increasingly desperate. Negotiations began, and the possibility of surrender emerged. The city that had been lost nearly 9 decades earlier was finally within reach. Yet the greatest lesson was not simply that Jerusalem could be conquered again. It was that perseverance had transformed weakness into strength. The journey from division to unity had taken generations, and the victory was the result of countless sacrifices made by leaders and ordinary people alike. Islam's 1,400-year history teaches that meaningful change rarely happens overnight. It begins when people refuse to surrender their principles during difficult times, when leaders choose patience over arrogance, and when communities learn that unity can accomplish what division cannot. Jerusalem was now waiting for its fate, and the next decision would reveal the true measure of Salahuddin's leadership. When Jerusalem opened its gates in 1187, the world witnessed a moment that had been decades in preparation. Salahuddin Ayyubi had achieved what many once considered impossible, yet the significance of the victory went far beyond the walls of one city. Jerusalem represented memory, faith, sacrifice, and the consequences of perseverance. After years of conflict, the city returned to Muslim control, and Salahuddin chose a path that contrasted sharply with the destruction that had accompanied its earlier capture. The story reminds us that true strength is not measured only by the ability to defeat an enemy, but also by the ability to control anger, honor commitments, and act with responsibility when power is finally achieved. This does not mean the Crusades ended with the recovery of Jerusalem. The struggle continued, and new Crusader armies arrived from Europe in what became known as the Third Crusade. Among their leaders was Richard the Lionheart, a formidable military commander. Battles continued across the region, and the future of Jerusalem again became uncertain. Yet Salahuddin maintained his determination despite exhaustion, political pressure, and repeated military challenges. Eventually, agreements established a period in which Jerusalem remained under Muslim control, while Christian pilgrims received access to the holy sites. The outcome demonstrated that history is rarely a simple story of victory and defeat. It is shaped by negotiation, endurance, sacrifice, and the decisions leaders make when circumstances are most difficult. The Crusades also left lessons that extend beyond medieval battlefields. They reveal the dangers of division, the importance of strategic thinking, and the power of patient leadership. Muslim resistance did not emerge from a single hero appearing at the perfect moment. It developed through generations of effort, from the determination of Nur ad-Din to the campaigns of Zengi and eventually the leadership of Salahuddin. Each generation prepared the ground for the next. That is one of the greatest messages within Islam's 1,400-year history. A community facing hardship should not measure its future only by the difficulties of today. History can change when courage is combined with wisdom, when unity replaces rivalry, and when patience guides action. The story of Jerusalem, therefore, becomes more than a record of medieval warfare. It becomes a reminder that setbacks can be temporary, while principles and perseverance can endure across centuries. The walls of Jerusalem have witnessed armies rise and fall, rulers arrive and disappear, and generations pass into history. Yet the lessons remain. Leadership requires humility. Resistance requires discipline. Unity requires sacrifice. And meaningful victory requires more than strength. It requires character. For anyone facing a difficult journey today, this history carries a powerful message. Do not allow temporary defeat to convince you that your story is finished. Learn from the past, strengthen yourself, remain patient, and continue moving toward what is right. The Crusades eventually became history, but their lessons continue to challenge every generation. If you're benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.